No rainy day today, but that was the Jayhawks with Save It for a Rainy Day.
And you're listening to The Business Show, and it's time to bid good afternoon once again to our favourite finance guru, Rob Lees from Mortgage Choice Blue Mountains in Penrith. And this
we
week,
get to see you every week.
Yeah.
This week we're talking about 4 principles you need to teach your children about money. That's an interesting topic.
It is a good one.
It is.
A good one.
Look, we actually discussed this earlier in the year. It was probably in February, and I thought I'd revisit it. It kind of, when we're talking about Christmas and planning for that, it just sort of came up in my mind as a time where it's probably worth revisiting again.
Yeah.
So the first thing on your list, Rob, is about budgets. So what should we teach children about a budget?
Yeah, look, it's just as simple as, we should only spend what we have to spend. I mean, these are principles we all need to learn, but we need to teach it to our kids while they're young.
Oh, do we ever?
That's right. And I suppose when it comes to our kids, they learn 2 ways. They learn by observing us, and they learn by practicing themselves. So what they're seeing with their parents is when we want to get something, we pull out the credit card, or we go to the cash machine and we get cash out. And it kind of seems
they
like
just think that it's just an endless supply.
Like my mum used to say, there's a money tree out the back, and she used to say there's no money tree out the back. So we have to teach them that there is no money tree out the back.
I used to say to my mum, "Oh, just write a cheque."
Yeah, that's right.
Which she used to laugh about, because I didn't really understand that was tied to
that's right.
actual money. It would just write the cheque.
So sometimes I think we've got to be able to say, I'm sorry, we can't afford that.
Yeah.
So sometimes we've got to be able to say no, so they observe that, but also for themselves. I think it's good for kids to have pocket money and to actually, pay for their expenses, obviously as they get older, from within that money that's given to them. And I'm always very grateful for what my mum did. She gave us pocket money, or it was a whole bunch of coins. It didn't even add up to $1 back in those days. But she'd divide up and she'd say, this is for soccer, this is for your guitar lessons, this is to put in the plate at church, and the rest is for you. You can spend on whatever you like. And it kind of gave me that idea that I had to pay my way. I had expenses that I had to meet. And if I went to the shop and spent that money that I should have had for soccer, I wouldn't have had any money for soccer.
That's right. And so what age were you, Rob? Like what
I think
age
probably,
is too young?
It depends on each kid. I seem to remember being around about maybe 9 or 10 years of age, perhaps a little bit younger. But I think that kind of thing is good. I did it with my kids as teenagers when they wanted to buy the clothes with the labels. We had that tension. And so I upped the allowance, and I said, well, you've got to manage it.
Yes.
And I remember one time my daughter had 2 big events on. She was 17 or 18, and she spent all her allowance on the Friday night, and she said, well, how am I going to pay for Saturday night? And I thought, bingo.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
bingo.
Fantastic.
You've got
and
it.
so you didn't save the day?
No, she had to choose.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? Because people are bailing
that's
bailing
right.
the kids
That's
out,
right.
and that's not really setting
And I
them
think
up very well.
that's the first principle. Only spend what you have to spend.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's actually your...
First point, the second point is, were you going to go to music? Will I go on to the second one? Or,
No, I go on to the second one,
Save today, spend tomorrow. The experience of delayed gratification.
Oh, God, everyone needs to learn this.
Again, instant society, we want everything all at once. We've got to teach
we're getting
our
worse.
kids. We've got to teach ourselves to wait.
Yeah.
And again, there's value in saying no. There's value in teaching our kids to save themselves. If they're wanting something, again, it's probably better to up their allowance and get them to put money aside than to pay for it. Or what I did with my son when he was saving for a mountain bike, he was doing a lot of downhill competition stuff. I said, look, if you can save X amount of dollars, I'll match it. So, and it just sort of brought in that discipline of saving and waiting until the funds were there.
And I think you enjoy something that you've saved and planned for so much longer that when you finally get to that point where whether it be the overseas trip or the car or whatever it is that you've been saving for, it's like, wow.
Well, I used to love lay-by. I used to love, you can still lay-by, but I always thought lay-by was great for that.
That's a good example.
Because, you'd go on a bit of a spree and you'd buy a whole lot of new clothes or whatever, but you couldn't afford them all at one time, but you could pay it off. And then that excitement when you're making the last payment and you're getting your parcel out, I loved that.
Delayed gratification is something we need to learn, and our kids need to learn.
I think it's something we've always needed to learn, but now that we're in a society where we're even more instant than ever before, I think it's become even more of a challenge. I'm a bit torn with the whole pocket money thing, I have to say. I used to give my kids pocket money, and then I decided, well, the jobs that they're doing in the house are really about them being a team with the family. So then I thought, right, well, we're not going to pay for your, if it's the dishwasher, that's part of you being the family. But now we're looking at a structure of like, we'll do extra work to earn some money. It's very tricky. I find this whole thing
too, and you've got to work it out as a family, of course, but I think it's good for kids as they get older to have their own money to spend.
Yeah, and it's just about managing that money, isn't it? When for the kids to understand that you've got to put some aside for certain things. I've got 3 daughters. I've got one that's such a saver that never has any money but's got all this money stashed in the bank, but you ask her, she's never got any money. And then the middle one's, it burns a hole in her pocket the minute she's got it, and then the third one's a real mixture. So I think they're all very different
so
personalities.
Because I think to myself, does it really matter what we try and teach them when they've got their own? Because I'm the same. I've got one who's a saver and one who is spending it the minute she is told. She doesn't even have it in her hand, and she's already like looked up something. I'm going to get the new Spirit Animals book or whatever it might be. It's hilarious, and it's like you didn't even have it yet.
Different. We have to be students of our kids, so we tailor make it for each child as well, because they are different.
So the middle one that was the spender, I used to control the savings account. That's how I managed that. I still do.
Okay. Yeah, right.
And she's
what I'll probably need to do.
21, 2, 22.
Yeah, but if it means that she's got some money behind her and spending more wisely, whatever works. That's my philosophy. Whatever works.
And you can stick it in your offset account against your mortgage, and we're all winning.
So principle 3 is giving. I love this one.
Giving's really important, and it's such an important part of financial management. Giving is better than receiving. Develop the discipline of giving, and it is a discipline. When I say better, it's because of higher quality. And you don't appreciate receiving, like, we're talking about Christmas and receiving gifts. You don't really appreciate receiving until you've learned to be a giver.
I believe you're
right.
My
4-year-old grandson was rattling off all the things he wanted us to buy for him on the weekend, Star Wars, Lego sets and all that kind of thing. And, of course, at 4, that's all he could kind of get his head around. But it sort of balances it out. And when I think about it, there's 2 things that will destroy people financially. Those 2 attributes, if you like, are greed and the fear of not having enough. And those same attributes will destroy you. It'll destroy you financially, but the antidote to those things is giving. So we don't want to raise greedy children, and we don't want to raise children who are afraid of not having enough. So they hold it tightly and never really make good investment decisions. So that's where giving's a great antidote to that, because you've got to let go, not be greedy, and you've also got to actually trust that you are going to have enough when you do give.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there, Rob.
And I think it's a very, very important principle.
Yeah.
And the 4th principle is avoiding debt.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. Just avoid debt, only use it when you have to, only borrow what you can afford to repay. And again, parents can get their kids into a healthy sort of debt, maybe buying their first car as they get older. Get them to pay it back. There's a discipline in that. And the other thing is teaching our kids, again, as they become young adults, the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that can be used to buy an asset that gains in value, like an investment. Bad debt is consumer debt, and we should avoid it wherever we can.
That's exactly right. So
good advice there.
Shall
very,
we
very good
recap
advice.
on those 4 topics again?
So budget was the first one?
Yeah, definitely. And delayed gratification.
Save today, spend tomorrow. Giving's better than receiving. Avoid debt and only use it when you have to. And
then everybody will have a great Christmas.
That's
Definitely.
Right.
And we'll hopefully teach our kids something at the same time. What about your kids? Are you happy with how your kids are turning out with their money? Can I throw that to you?
Kids, I mean, they're young to do your best. And, with 4 kids, I think they've done okay. I mean, we're like us as adults. We're not perfect. Sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. But all up, there's no big money disasters, which is good.
That's good, because I'll be the first to put my hand up. Like, this is an area that I've got to work on.
And it just takes time.
He'd be nodding.
It just takes time. I've got a 28-year-old son who loves 4-wheel vehicles, and he tries to tell me they're investments. But
maybe if you keep them for 60 years and they become.
But he's just sold one down. I think he's almost getting ready to buy his first property, and he's downsized, so that's probably not a bad thing. So he's getting there.
Yes, I'm sure your wisdom has paid off immensely. Rob, no problem. So we've got one more show for before we wrap up the year. So we will see you again next week. Thank you for coming in and sharing your knowledge. I'm knocking things over here in the studio. That's Rob Leeds from Mortgage Choice Blue Mountains in Penrith, and you can contact Rob on 4739 9749 or visit their offices at 3/13 Hope Street, Blaxland. Do you get any drop-ins? Any drop-ins?
Yeah, we get a few walk-ins. Always happy to, whether it's phone,
I love that.
whatever.
I love that we can promote your address and people can pop in and see you.
Yeah, that, as we learned earlier, is becoming less a thing. People are online, so it's good that people have still got a physical place to go to.
Yeah.
But, like everything, I wonder whether it will turn full circle. That's the thing. People will want to come and have the face-to-face again.
I think people still like face-to-face, even though we do a lot of internet stuff and phone stuff. I think we still like the face-to-face.
I agree. I agree. I think people naturally are drawn to people and will always prefer to deal with
there's happening, and that you can't get that over a blue screen.
That's right.
No,
not at all.
definitely not. Fantastic. Thanks, Rob.